Welcome to From the Editor, a weekly conversation with Columbus Dispatch reporters about their cover stories that we publish here on Dispatch.com and in the Sunday Dispatch. I'm Mike Shearer, executive editor of the Columbus Dispatch and Dispatch.com. I'm here today with reporter Jim Weiker, who discusses his cover story on a Columbus company that many of you have probably not heard of, despite the fact that it is the most valuable company, at least for Wall Street accounting purposes, in Central Ohio. So, Jim, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Good. Glad you could be here. So I guess for starters, I've been asking reporters to sit down and first tell us a little bit about what you do for the Dispatch. You are a growth and development reporter. Just tell our audience a little bit about what that means and how you go about your beat every day here for the Dispatch.
Sure. I've been here 25 years, most of the time covering real estate, development, housing. I wrote a housing column for quite a while. My beat is sort of everything development, real estate related. It can be major projects, which takes up a lot of the attention, as you can imagine. But it can be home trends. It can be real estate transactions. We wrote one just yesterday about Ohio Health, looking to buy the old Big Lots headquarters, for example. So I try to keep my eyes open for any of that stuff, for trends, for news, for developments. There's a lot going on, of course, as you know, around Columbus. So it's a big territory, but we do our best.
Okay, thank you. So one of the developments we've been having a lot of is data centers, of course. There's been data centers from Amazon, Microsoft, and others built across the region here. And that has helped not only what's happening here in Central Ohio, but across the world, I guess, has helped a certain company here in Columbus. So how did this story come about? We're talking about Vertiv, which is a company based in Westerville. How did this kind of story come about, and how did you learn about what was going on with Vertiv?
Well, we look at quarterly numbers, stock performance of publicly traded companies around Central Ohio. There's about 30 of them. We don't ordinarily write stories on quarterly reports or earnings statements, but we do look at those to see what might be happening, see if there's a big story. We noticed, almost 2 years ago now, that Vertiv stock really started to climb, and it continued to climb through 23 and well into 2024 to really, huge proportions. The climb was, I don't know if it's unprecedented in Central Ohio, but it was really striking, the valuation of the company. Early this year, the stock price had risen so much that Vertiv's what's called market capitalization, the total value of the company, became the most valuable in Central Ohio. It was over $50 billion. This is more valuable than companies that most of our viewers are going to be familiar with: Kroger, AEP, Cardinal Health. But at the same time, people know about those companies. Mm-hmm. They know about those companies. They know about other big Ohio companies, P&G, Progressive. These are almost household names. Vertiv isn't, even though it's been around for decades. Go ahead.
Oh, no. So let's talk about, Vertiv makes, let's talk about what they make here.
Sure.
But they're as data centers are built, there's a great chance that Vertiv equipment is in these data centers. And quite simply, as we were talking about here a moment ago, it gets warm in this room, any room where you have a lot of computer equipment, and things get hot, right? And Vertiv tries to cool them down, I guess. So tell us about that.
That's more or less it. That's a key part of their business. There's another one I'll mention here in a moment. But Vertiv started almost 80 years ago. It was a refrigeration company. It was founded by a man named Ralph Liebert. Most of our readers, our older ones, I should say, will remember it as a Liebert company. It was founded in 1946. By the mid-'60s, it started specializing in what at that time was kind of a niche field, cooling computer rooms, which generate a lot of heat. For years, that was done in a pretty simple way through basically air conditioning, through air. But the industry grew to the point where Emerson acquired Liebert in the 80s, grew it, and in 2020, the company spun off into a different company, its own publicly traded company. What really accounted for its explosion in the last several years are data centers, as you mentioned, and these enormous centers that hold nothing but computer gear that just gets hot and hot and hot. Vertiv designs and builds systems that cool those spaces down, cool the gear down. They also do one other thing that is essential for data centers. They design and build, again, systems that regulate the power into the centers. If electricity goes out into these centers, for us it's an inconvenience. For a data center, it's a crisis.
Yeah.
Data. These serve customers and clients and consumers worldwide. If they lose power, it's a huge problem. So the industry has to figure out how to stabilize the power, but also how to make sure it doesn't just click on and off, and they can't lose power. So Vertiv designs and builds what are called UPS, uninterrupted power supply systems, that regulate this. Both of those are really essential to data centers. And I guarantee Vertiv will not reveal the names of its clients, but I guarantee you, if you walk into data centers around Central Ohio, these massive things that are being built, you will see Vertiv equipment in them.
Okay. So their headquarters are right off Cleveland Avenue in Westerville. They have 23 manufacturing facilities across the world, including 2 here in Ohio, 240 service centers that serve 130 countries, and overall 30,000 employees with 1,500 here in Central Ohio. Right. So this is a big company, obviously.
It's huge. And it is something, people have driven by their headquarters, I imagine, on Cleveland Avenue. It's right on the road. It's easy to see. But I imagine a lot of people still don't really know what they do or who they are, which, of course, is why we were interested. But to give you a sense of the scale of the company, last year, they just reported earnings today. Last year, they had sales of $8 billion. It's just become an enormous company. One thing that happened to really account for Vertiv's explosion in the stock price it happened at the tail end of 2022 and into 23. That's when you really, really saw the company's stock take off. It was AI.
Yeah.
AI has become so much part of the language today that we forget how new it is. GPT was released in November of 2022. The following year, within months, really, AI had basically taken over the data center world, and it became such a hot commodity, so to speak, that companies like Vertiv that serve the industry saw an explosion in their stock and in the interest in the company. Vertiv's stock really started its climb then. And not only is AI, such a huge deal, it also requires more equipment because AI generates far more heat than conventional computer software and chips do. So Vertiv really was perfectly positioned to enjoy this explosion that we're seeing now.
Okay. But things have been a bit more volatile here of late because there's been now the Chinese entry into AI where maybe not as much power needs to be used for AI? That's
exactly right. I mean, one thing I found interesting about Vertiv is they're a very old company, but they really run with the new kids. The companies that they basically benchmark themselves with are companies that are far, far newer. Facebook, Google, even Microsoft isn't anywhere near as old as Vertiv can trace its roots to. The good news is for Vertiv, they have hitched their wagon to a booming star. And the data center growth is exploding. There are approximately 5,400 data centers right now in the U.S. That's five times as many, or double, I should say, as it was 5 years ago. 5 years from now, it's going to be double that again, is what we're seeing around town. That's happening everywhere. The risk, though, is it's still a very volatile industry. And when something like DeepSeek was announced and it just tanked the tech industry, Vertiv stock just really took a dive. Its value dropped when that happened, roughly by a third. It's regained some of that value. It's not today, on February 12th. It is not the most valuable company in Central Ohio. It's lost some of that share. I would be surprised if it didn't regain it. But it does illustrate how volatile and mercurial that industry can be.
Well, the stock price had speculation in it that the demand was going to just grow exponentially because of AI, and now that's been tempered some.
Right. And also, the AI investment, Microsoft alone announced last year that it was going to invest $80 billion in data centers. Even for a company like Microsoft, that's an enormous amount of money.
Yeah.
But the payoff, the return on these investments isn't there yet. So this is all gearing for the future. There's so much uncertainty built into this right now. Will Microsoft build that? Will they just contract with other companies? Will they, where does the landscape really land, and how many of these things will be built? What are their needs? The needs to cool some of the AI chips is different than conventional and traditional needs. So there is a lot of uncertainty in the whole industry. Having said that, Vertiv is as well positioned as you can be.
Yeah, I was just going to say, regardless, there's still going to be demand for data centers, and AI is going to drive some level of need for more of their equipment and more data centers, regardless of what happens. The question is how much.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, and Vertiv is a market leader in its niches. There are some big competitors. There's a lot of innovation in that world, as you can imagine. Vertiv does a lot of innovation. We went through one of its R&D centers in Delaware, huge operation sort of on the south west part of the city. There's that one specialized in the electrical UPS systems that they do. But there is a lot of innovation in that company. But there's a lot of innovation and very smart competitors all over that landscape who are doing things I can't even begin to understand.
Okay. Well, but for our purposes today, your story that comes out this weekend explains what one of the companies that you may drive by in Central Ohio on any given day, what it does and what it's all about, and how it just also happens to be this incredibly valuable company that's grown exponentially in the last few years.
Yes, exactly. We hope it sheds light into a company that I doubt many people know about, even though they may see its headquarters up there. Maybe they've seen their name around town. But they are really in the front end of a exploding industry, not only locally, of course, but nationally, globally.
Yeah. Well, I know I had never heard of them until you guys brought them up in one of our planning meetings. So anyway, but Jim, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your insights and the conversation you're reporting on this important story. And for our viewers out there, thanks for joining us this week. And look for Jim's stories on dispatch.com and in the print paper on Sunday. And next week, we'll be back to talk about the Columbus City Attorney, Zach Klein. We have a profile running of him from reporter Jordan Laird. So we'll be back next week with that edition. Thanks and have a great day.